Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new tutorial series on building a Slack bot in Python. Now I'll quickly introduce what Slack is in case any of you are not aware, but Slack is just another messaging platform. It's similar to something like Discord, maybe even comparable to something like Microsoft Teams. I know a lot of large companies use Slack for their main communication. The nice thing with it is it's really easy to direct message people. You can add teammates, you have a bunch of different channels, there's all kinds of emojis, you can have some nice formatted messages. I don't use Slack all that often, but a lot of you guys have been asking me to make a Slack bot, so I figured I would go ahead and make this tutorial series. Now in this series, I'm going to be making kind of shorter videos, aiming to have them about 10 to 15 minutes in length that show you kind of individual things. So the first thing we're going to do in this video is just configure the Slack bot, which will actually take a good amount of time. And then we'll actually add it into a channel and have it so it sends a message. That will just show you the basics and the setup. Then from there, what we'll do is we'll configure events. So essentially allowing us to subscribe to specific events. So if a user, messages in a channel, that will send us that message or send us an event that happened. We can handle that event and then maybe we could reply to them. We could track that message. We can see if they send a command, so on and so forth. We can do all kinds of stuff like that. So you'll see what we're going to do later in the tutorial series, but let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to need to do here is just make a new workspace. So you can see right now, I'm in the workspace I was using before. I called it Python API tutorial, just the Slack API. I was just messing around before preparing for this tutorial. But to create a new workspace, you're going to have to obviously make an account on Slack. I'm going to assume you can figure out how to do that on your own. And then if you're already in a workspace for some reason, you can click on it and then click Add Workspace. So I've already got that open here. This is the page that will pop up when you press Add Workspace. You need to insert an email. I'll get my email to actually be blurred here. I don't want you guys to see that. And then I will click continue. All right, it's going to send me a confirmation code. I'll go ahead and set this up. And then once the workspace is ready, I will be right back. All right, so I went ahead and configured that. I guess I'll just call this one Slack bot tutorial. I'll just label this one YouTube so I can differentiate these two. And now I have a new workspace. Now I'm not going to add any teammates here. Let's skip that step. And I guess we'll say hello team as our first message. All right, so here we are in our new workspace. Now what we're gonna do is go ahead and head over to the Slack API website. All of the links here will be in the description. You can find them down below. And we're going to configure our first app. So what I'm gonna do is press on my app right here, or your apps in the top corner. You'll notice that I already have one right here. Your page may look a little bit different. But all we're going to do is press create new app and go ahead and give it a name and then choose what workspace we want this to be in. So I'm going to go ahead and name this one YouTube bot like that. And then I'll put this inside of Slack bot tutorial for YouTube. All right, so create app. And now you can see we're on the kind of the dashboard here. And what we're going to have to do is configure a bunch of different things. So the first thing that we're going to do here is we're actually going to go ahead and go to bots, like this, and we're going to go to review scopes and add. So essentially we need to give our bot permissions for whatever it's going to be doing in the channel. So we can pick how many permissions we want it to have. It can merely just read messages, or it can send messages, or it can add reactions, or it can view email addresses, and all kinds of different things like that. So what we're going to do is go down here to add an Oauth Scope. Essentially the scopes are just the permissions that we have for our bot in whatever workspace we're in. So here we can see there's a bunch of different scopes. They have permissions for what they all do. You obviously could add all of them if you wanted to, but right now we only need one, and we just need the chat and then write one. So I need to find where that is. Chat. Come on, where are you? Chat write is somewhere. Okay, so I found it. I just searched right here and then it popped up. I have chat write. Okay, so that's all we need. This just allows us to send messages in a chat. Later on, we will add other permissions and you'll see how we actually figure out which ones we need to add. But for now, that's all we need. The next thing that we need to do is actually generate a token for our bot. So to do that, we first need to install this into our workspace, and then I believe we can generate a token. We're gonna need to take that token, copy that on our clipboard, and then we'll add that to our actual Python code, which we'll start writing in a second. So I'm gonna say install app. Here we can say, this is what it's allowed to do, perform actions in channels and conversations. We will allow that, and there we go. So now you can see we get a token for your workspace. So I'm going to copy that token right here. I will blur this out just so you guys don't see it and mess with my Slack bot. But just something to note here that if we add any more scopes, we will need to reinstall this app into our workspace. So if you mess with any of these scopes, you're going to need to reinstall this. I don't think the token will change when you do that, but just keep in mind, it will ask you to reinstall this in the workspace if you mess around with any of the scopes. All right, so now that we have that, we're actually kind of good to go, and we can head over to our Python code. So I'm in VS Code right now. This is the editor I'm going to use for this tutorial. Of course, you guys can use whatever you want, but I'm going to start by just making a new Python file and calling this bot.py. You can call this whatever you want. It does not need to be called bot.py. I'm also going to make another file here, and I'm going to call this .env. Now, .env is standing for our environment variable file. So this is going to hold our token and a few other things that we'll need later on so that we can actually connect to our workspace and to our Slack bot. So the first thing I'm going to do in here is I'm going to say Slack_token equals without a space, and then I'm going to paste that token that I had from the Slack API. So go ahead and do that, .env, so just period as the start. You should see a little gear icon popping up if you're in VS Code. If you're not in VS Code, that's totally fine. Just make sure these two files, the Python file and the env file, are in the same directory. Then go ahead and save this file. Now what we're going to need to do next is install some Python packages using pip. So if you're not familiar with pip, I actually don't know what it stands for. I always call it package installer for Python, but I know that's not the correct name. But anyways, we need to go to our command prompt on our system. If you are on Mac and Linux, this is going to be a little bit different, so I'll explain those steps in 1 second. But start by just typing pip, so PIP. We type that and you should see some output popping up. Now this obviously assumes you have Python installed on your system. Now for some reason pip is not working. I have a video on my channel that explains how to install Pygame. So if you follow that, what it will actually do is show you how to reconfigure your pip. Obviously, when you get to the step where you're installing Pygame, rather than installing Pygame, install the module I'm about to show you here. So if pip is working for you, then what you're going to do if you're on Windows in your command prompt is do pip install, spell install correctly, and then Slack, and spell Slack correctly, client. This is what we're going to need to use to actually connect to our Slack client. So we'll just pip install Slack client. Now, oops, let me go back to command prompt here. The next thing that we're going to need to do is install python-env. Now what this is going to do is allow us to read from this environment variable file. I just always like to use this module. It makes things a lot easier. So pip install python-env. Make sure you add the python hyphen before. All right, so we're going to install that. You can see that we're already satisfied for me, but you guys should see some kind of loading bars and everything should be working. Now, if you're on Linux or you're on Mac, this will be the exact same steps, except you're going to go to terminal. And instead of pip, you're going to type pip3. So pip3 should be the only difference here. And if that doesn't work for you, again, I have another video that shows you how to reconfigure pip on Mac so that works. So I will leave that in the description as well, and maybe put a card somewhere on the screen. All right, now that we have that, what we're going to do is go inside of our bot.py file and start writing some code. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import Slack. Next, I'm going to import OS, which stands for operating system, I believe. And then we are going to import something from pathlib. Now, pathlib is built into Python 3 by default. I will note right now that you need to use Python 3.6 or above. So you should already be using that version, but you do need that. So actually, I'm going to say not import pathlib, but I'm going to say from pathlib import, and then with a capital P path. And then I'm going to say from, oops, if I can type correctly here, from .env import load_.env. What this is going to do is simply load our environment variable file. So the first thing I'm going to do is say env_path, which stands for our environment variable file path, is equal to path. And then I'm going to put a dot inside of a string here. This stands for current directory. Then I'm going to add a slash, and I'm going to do env with a period before it. So this is just denoting where the path for our file is so that we can load it. Next, we're going to say load.env, and then we're going to say .env_path equals env_path. Again, just loading this environment variable file, which will load the environment variable that we had inside of there. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to say RTM client, which is just the client that we're, sorry, not RTM client. What am I saying? This should be client is equal to Slack.web client. Web client is what we're going to use for this tutorial. There is some other clients built into Slack here. I'm not really going to talk about them. It's just part of the Slack API in this specific module. In our case, we're going to use the web client. So we're going to say client equals slack.web client, and then we're going to say token equals os.environ, or however you say that. And then inside of square brackets, we're going to put the name of the environment variable that we had here. So in this case, I put Slack token. So I'm going to go ahead and put Slack token inside of here. And what this should do is load the actual value from this file and then kind of pass that in as our token. So that is how we're going to store the token. The reason I'm not just storing it in plain text here is because it's better practice to load this as an environment variable. And say you had this on a GitHub repository or something, you would simply upload all of the code and you just wouldn't upload this environment variable file. So that way no one knows what your token is. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, so now we have a client. This should actually be working. What we're going to do is go ahead and run this and see if this works. All right, so I got an annoying error here that's saying no module named Slack. Now, it's actually good that I ran into this because I wanted to cover this for you guys. What happens here is that Slack recently, like their API for the Python package has been changed a bunch. So if this doesn't work for you for some reason, what you're going to need to do is simply uninstall Slack. So pip uninstall Slack client like that, and then just simply reinstall it afterwards. So in this case, I'm going to say, yes, we will remove all of that. And then I'm going to say pip install Slack clients like that. And hopefully this should reinstall and everything should be working fine. So that uninstall and reinstall actually worked for me. You can see I'm not getting that red squiggly line anymore. And now Slack should actually import properly. So let me go ahead and run this, and we can see that that actually worked. There was no error, which means that this is perfectly fine. So the next thing that I will do is I will set this up so we actually send a message into the Slack client, Slack workspace, what am I saying? But if you run this and no errors happen at all, you're good. You will see an error if your token is incorrect or if you can't connect to your Slack web client. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say client dot, and this should be chat, and then dot underscore post message. And this is simply the method to actually post the message to the chat. Now, the first thing that we need to pass in here is the channel that we want to post to. So we're going to say channel equals, and then we're going to do the pound sign for the name of the channel, and then test or whatever other channel we have. So in this case, let's actually go back to our Slack workspace. And rather than just having this general channel here, what I'm going to do is make a new channel. So I'll create a new channel. I'm just going to call this one test like that. I will press create. I don't need to add anyone into this right now, but what I will do is connect an app. So notice this is add people and connect an app. So I have to add my YouTube bot into this channel, otherwise I'm gonna get an error. So let's say connect an app, and then we should see that we have YouTube bot. I will go ahead and I will add that in. All right, so now we have the YouTube bot inside of this channel, and we should be good to connect to it and send a message into it. So I will leave this open, I guess. We'll go back to that in a second, but we'll say channel equals test, the name of the channel we just created, and then text is gonna be equal to whatever we wanna send. So in this case, let's just say, hello world exclamation point. Now what I can do is simply run this, and we should see that we don't get any errors. That's great. And if I go back to my Slack channel here, we have our YouTube bot saying hello world. Now let me just show you quickly what happens if I try to send something in the general channel when our bot is not added to that channel. So let's say general like that. And let's run this, and notice that we get all kinds of text giving us an error. And if we look right here, it says the server responded with okay, false, which means no, this was not good, error, not in channel. So it's telling us the bot is not inside of the channel. So if you run into any errors, just look at this last line here and see if you can kind of understand what was sent. But that is pretty much all I wanted to show you for this video. So I'll go back to test, run this one more time to make sure that I haven't messed anything up, and we get hello world popping up one more time. So obviously in the next few videos, we're going to be doing a lot more advanced stuff. This was just the basic setup. I wanted to show you guys how we can configure everything, and hopefully that's working for all of you. So with that being said, if you enjoyed, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment letting me know what you want to see for the rest of this tutorial series.